Alright, welcome in. I made a video on this site almost 2 years ago trying to evaluate Desmond Ridder as a prospect, and the literal title of that video is Desmond Ridder is Bad. And last year I thought he showed a lot of promise. I was actually kind of in on him. I thought he improved greatly from 2020 to late 2022 when he was at Cincinnati to Atlanta. Because, to be perfectly honest, I hated Desmond Ridder as a prospect. I thought he was bad. I thought he was inaccurate. I was like, no way this dude is going to get drafted above Sam Howell, which, by the way, I'm victory lapping on that now. Might end up looking dumb down the road, but I'm victory lapping on that now because Sam Howell is my QB1 that year. I was like, okay, he was able to get the ball to Drake London, and if you are a Falcons quarterback, that's about all you need to do. Like, the Falcons are never going to go ham with a mid-tier quarterback, and honestly, they're not going to go ham with the bottom 5 QBs that they've been trotting out from 2022 to 2023. The best quarterback they've had in the past 3 years in Kyle Pitts' career has been Matt Ryan, who is about to be pushed over the old man cliff. The only difference that they have from 2022 to 2023 is Bijan Robinson. It's been equally as bad as Mariota for Desmond Ridder. And there are a laundry list of tweets I can put up on the screen right now that just summarize how terrible Desmond Ridder has been for the Falcons. But let's talk about Kyle Pitts for a second. Tight ends as a whole are notoriously difficult to predict because the position requires much more of a defined skill set than just being a good receiver. But Kyle Pitts, combining his athleticism and production, was maybe the greatest tight end prospect of all time. I still see some people saying Vernon Davis, but the fact that this is even a discussion tells you everything you need to know about Kyle Pitts' potential in the modern NFL. Pitts was the biggest historical outlier for a skill position guy. 98th percentile for wingspan, 93rd percentile for hand size, 98th percentile for 40-yard dash, 95th percentile for his 20-yard split, 97th percentile for his broad jump. And by the way, the 40-yard dash, 20-yard split, and broad jump statistics are the upper 90th percentiles as a tight end, and he weighs 240 pounds. The process behind Kyle Pitts in 2021 was he was just BPA. And that seems to be a common trend for the Falcons, is they just take BPA, but they don't really know how to construct an offensive or defensive unit, in my opinion. The thing about Pitts being drafted in 2021 is the reasoning they did it is because if you can find a player big enough to block and nimble enough to serve as a threat in the receiving game, you have a true mismatch because linebackers are too slow to cover him. Cornerbacks and safeties are too small to A, guard him, B, bring him down when he gets to the second level. And the Falcons drafted him 4th overall in 2021 when they were in absolutely no position to draft a skill guy that year. That's how freaky he was. And you could say, well, I guess it speaks to the stupidity of the Atlanta Falcons for deciding to draft him, but it also speaks to how good of a prospect that he was, to where the team was just like, yeah, whatever, we'll just worry about the other stuff later. I just remember telling my friends that a tight end going in the top 5 is one of the least intelligent developments imaginable. Not only is it not worth it from a contract standpoint, but the positional value just isn't there when it comes to the position being notoriously difficult to translate at the NFL level. They passed on 3 different picks at 3 positions they needed so that they could get a tight end. And by the way, Jamar, Waddle, and Devontae aren't a part of those 3 guys who I think they should have taken instead because the Falcons wouldn't be throwing to those guys either. But these past 2 years haven't really represented Kyle Pitts well as a player. But that first year doesn't justify taking him over the other options that the Falcons had available. This pick has been a massive miss so far for Atlanta, no questions asked. You should just expect more out of a 4th overall player. But don't get me wrong, this is not Kyle Pitts' fault whatsoever. Absolutely not even a little bit. I can't blame him. I can't find a single thing to blame him on. He is the greatest tight end prospect literally arguably ever. And even with a Matt Ryan who was close to being pushed off the old man cliff, he had the most receiving yards for a rookie tight end since 1961. This is not a Kyle Pitts problem. You can say whatever you want about him, like giving up on his routes or maybe not being a strong blocker. I know there was that clip on Twitter of him kind of getting beat by the Jaguars edge rushers in the red zone, but he should have never been put in that position in the first place. I love Kyle Pitts, but the Falcons after 2020 were so many pieces away from contending that it wasn't even funny. Legitimately, they should have gone after premium position or taken a trade back haul. But regardless, the fact that they didn't and Kyle Pitts is being wasted on Atlanta by Arthur Smith shows us something else. Kyle Pitts wasn't always being wasted by a coach who makes baffling passing game calls or a subpar quarterback. His rookie year, Kyle Pitts had a 19.2% target share, which was the second highest by a rookie tight end ever. And here in that volume of targets on an average depth of target that was deeper than all of Jimmy Graham's, Travis Kelce's, Vernon Davis, and Rob Gronkowski's highest average depth of target. So not only has Atlanta transitioned from Matt Ryan having them in shootouts every single game, but they've become a team that runs the ball at a historically high rate. The only thing that bailed Atlanta out of having the highest run percentage pretty much ever in the modern era last year was the fact that Chicago last year literally had no weapons. But the thing that baffles me about Kyle Pitts' usage is that Arthur Smith always responds to every press conference with, the reporter will say, "Hey, Arthur, you're not using the skill guys you took in the top 10 in the passing game." And his response is, "Well, let the fantasy guys worry about that." As if it's not valid criticism to wonder what the heck the front office was doing using a 4th overall pick on a tight end only for plays to be schemed up for Jonnu Smith instead. Like, there is a clear disconnect between Smith and Terry Fontenot, and I don't know who's going to win out. Fontenot and the rest of the front office keeps taking skill guys top 10 despite not being in a position to do so. And let me just say, Bijan fits the identity of this team, but Drake London and Kyle Pitts were both wildly confusing picks for an Arthur Smith archetype offense. Part of me thinks the Falcons just go into the draft with a BPA no matter what strategy, with no understanding on how to construct a unit on either side of the ball. Because yes, the offense can win in games, but they can only do that when they run 70 times, and the defense is Swiss cheese. This defense was bad last year, and anytime you can improve your 3rd-ranked rushing attack, drafting a running back in the top 10 instead of improving your bottom 5 defense, you just have to do it. Kyle Pitts has 7 red zone targets since the beginning of the 2022 season. Granted, he missed the back half of the year. But Kelce has 35 in that same time span. Hawkinson has 22, Ertz has 20, Njoku has 20, Andrews has 20, Higbee has 16. If you have a 6'6", 240-pound tight end who is one of the best size-adjusted athletes to ever come out as a prospect, the Lions should be very thankful that the Falcons are doing this to Pitts in London, because the spotlight would be on them just as big right now for giving Montgomery 30 touches a game as opposed to Gibbs 10. But Pitts and London are now tied for the highest percentage of uncatchable targets in this league. Last year, Desmond Ridder had the highest off-target throw percentage in the league. He was also at an NFL worst, -6.5 completion percentage over expectation. This is eerily similar to an Elijah Moore situation where it just ain't happening in Atlanta for Pitts, and I hope he gets out of there. It's time to make the switch to Heineke, first of all. But Atlanta said they were not going to trade Kyle Pitts, sadly, even though I think they should. There have been rumors of him going to the Cowboys, which would hit like crack. But Pitts deserves better. They just clearly had a vision for him, and it's not only not happening, but it ain't going to happen in Atlanta. The scheme just doesn't allow for him to thrive, and he might possibly miss out on a big second contract with that life-changing generational money. He deserves better. I know it's really hard to feel bad for these guys, and he's probably crying into his bags of money right now that he's not getting targets. But when he does get the chance to go ham in the NFL, whether it's on Atlanta or a different team, it'll be absolutely amazing.